at some stage. Good evening all, and welcome to the April Hamden Town Council meeting. Starting at 7:30. We'll just go through the agenda as normal. Item 25205, apologies for absence. We have apologies for absence from councillors Fuller, Green and Gray. Are we prepared to accept their apologies for absence? I hear I see nods around the table, so we'll take that as read and move on to item 25206, declarations of interests. So we are asked to receive and consider any declarations of interest from members and officers under Section 50 of the Local Government Act 2000. I'll read them all and then we'll go back and sort them. Item 2520601 to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests. Item 2520602 to declare any valid interests. Item 2520603 to declare any request for dispensation. 20604 to report gifts of hospitality except only value £50, and 05 to report any appropriate gifts of hospitality offered. We have a few. Right.
Sadly not gifts, but I am associated with this association and Lipsy and speaking together, so I'm close to the case.
Thank you. Anybody else? Ian?
I live on St Peter's Road, and through my work at the school, I'm aware of one of the people being referred to in the annual town meeting.
Thank you. Just put your hand raised. I would declare interest also in the ODF grant application because of my close involvement with the Queen Victoria Board. Item 25207, minutes of previous meetings. We're asked to approve and sign minutes of the full council meeting held on the 17th of March. There's a true and accurate record. First of all, are there any queries or questions about the minutes, Max?
Yes, I haven't got them in front of me. Actually, I think I do now. Yes. Oh, that's funny. That's different from what I looked at before.
You weren't on the other one, I know. I saw you were missing. I had you down that you weren't there, and then I thought, well, you were there. Yes, it has.
So nothing. In that case, could I have a proposer that the minutes are accepted as an accurate record? Councillor Chesser, thank you. For the second of the minutes are accurate. Councillor Chuckle, thank you. For those in favour. Thank you. I'll sign those in a moment. We will move on to item 25208, public participation from interested parties for members of the public. I'm going to invite Philip Hanks to talk this about the Hamden Vintage Festival. Given the questions that were raised at FG Community last week.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. The Vintage Festival was a project that sort of grew on. Previously, we had run the Annual Carnival as a group of us, and the Vintage Festival seemed the next step. We've ran the first event in 2018, which was hugely successful, and we decided to do it every second year. So 2020 came along, we've got everything planned and organised, and we'd kindly had a grant towards the marshals for that event, because the first event we put the marshals, we didn't use marshals. We did it through our own barriers with doing it with volunteers, which was Oundle people can be very rude when they're in their cars, and we were left with not one volunteer who said they would come back and do it again. And I spoke to the clerk and I spoke to Lisa about, and they started using some professional marshals. And so we came for the 2020 event, we applied for a grant and we received a grant, which we didn't actually take because the event through COVID got cancelled. 2024 came around and was the next event that we actually put on. And we got the grant from you again, which was greatly appreciated, because the professionalism of those marshals is what makes the event a success and safe. The rest of us are all volunteers doing it their professionalism helps us put the event on very safely because they give us advice, they give us the ability to communicate around the outside of the event, and it is an essential part of making the event safe and also successful, hence why we've made the application for the grant. Any other question? Anything else you'd like to hear from me? I mean, it is an all-inclusive event. We literally invite everybody to be involved, every town person, anybody who has a club, association, charity who wants to be involved. We give them space within the marketplace to promote themselves, and lots of people raised lots of money last year for their own clubs and associations. Plus, we raised some money towards what we call the Annual Community Fund.
So, but just to be clear here, the budget that you produced shows a planned surplus of £1,000, assuming the
You get the
council
grant.
gives a grant for the security event, as they have done twice before. Without that grant, you could run into a loss.
Yeah.
Right. Second question, one of the issues raised at FGP was your planning reserves 32,000. Would you like to clarify that?
Sadly, we don't. And if we did have, I wouldn't be standing in front of you asking for it because we would have been able to afford it ourselves. That was literally a typo error. I've tried to repeat it, but I think I must have pressed several buttons at the wrong time. And when I scanned it through, all the figures seemed right, but I didn't pick up the 32,000. So apologies.
So it's four marshals, your reserves are 2,000, and without the security support,
Yeah.
we don't want to
Yeah, we'll run as a loss. And that's what we'll bring into the doubt whether we could actually put the event on safely and properly.
Any questions of Philip? I'll take James and then Max.
So, for our contribution of £3,000 supports an event that's going to produce direct profit or surplus out of your organisation, £1,000, and the ancillary uncosted benefits of the event itself. And then you've mentioned that the participating organisations also then hopefully produce surpluses that go towards their own funds. Have you got any idea about what scale of surpluses they do manage to achieve?
Well, the afternoon teas for volunteer action and not help the aged, age concerned, whatever, the care committee, they raise over £1,000 each through their work. Not air ambulance, yes, not air ambulance, the first responders. But it was their most profitable fundraising event that they've had. They didn't give us an exact figure, but it went a long way to helping them make sure that they could run for another year. Various of the sports clubs raised a lot of money. The church, St Peter's, we put on a teddy bear parachute event, raised a lot of money for development of things within the church and the work that they were trying to do. So yeah, there was so many people who raised an awful lot of money towards what they were trying to achieve. I mean, our aim is to cover our costs and raise a bit of money. It's giving everybody else a platform for all ages, to make sure that we're promoting Oundle and making sure we get new people visiting Oundle. This is what we're trying to do as a group, is just bring people to come and have a look at our great marketplace and see it. So that's the sole aim. It's not about how much money it's about making sure we put on a great event. And if we make some money, then we can donate it back.
Thanks, Philip. Max, you have a question?
It's clarification around that final point. First of all, Philip, I think Vintage Festival is a wonderful advertisement for the town. I'm sure we would all, celebrate the work that you and others do to make it happen. However, on the Vintage website, it says that any profits made are given back to the town council in order to then recirculate as future grants and what have you. And that didn't actually happen for 2024.
It has happened, but it's come because we as a group have struggled to sort out, because we are an event that happens every other year. So the Business Association has allowed us to use their bank account to transfer money in and out. So all the money that we've donated to the things like the screen at Queen Victoria Hall and so forth has come from the Annual Business Association,
Yeah,
but that has come from our funds.
it says very clearly on your website
Not anymore, that has been corrected.
that, oh, okay, well, when I read it last, when the application came in, that those monies were given back to the finance committee, so the finance committee can make a decision how this money is spent. And what seems to be happening is that that's not the case, that actually OPA are making that decision. So I'm just wanting clarity. I don't.
Well, there's-
I'm glad
yeah.
to see the money being recycled.
We
I
had
just
a,
want to know what's actually.
yeah,
happening.
we had a conversation with Clark about, because we'd raised this money towards, that we wanted to put into the community fund, that would go to actual material things. We didn't want to paint a wall. We wanted to produce a screen, etc. So the agreement was that once a need was discovered, that we would then transfer the money to the town council for that money to be paid to that appropriate project.
Right.
And that's what's been happening.
Essentially, the website wording needs to be changed to reflect what actually happens as opposed to.
And that has been, that because it was highlighted to us, we've corrected that.
So
Yeah.
I'm sure it's all being used for good causes. It's just-
Yeah. Yeah, the money is being, as a project is coming, we're then transferring it through to the town council so they can go to the various projects.
the wording needs to be that's good.
So what's plan B if we don't give you the money, the grant?
We sit down and decide whether we can afford to put it on
Right.
financially.
What sort of things will you be looking to?
Well, we've approached the town for sponsorship towards the event. And at the moment, as you're, I'm sure, aware, marketplace businesses haven't got a lot of pockets, big or deep pockets at the moment to support it. So it would be whether we consider to try and make sure we raise enough money on the day through donations and rattling buckets, or the event doesn't take place.
But you keep mentioning words like lots and lots of money, but without giving any kind of figures.
Well, yeah, because we're giving people the opportunity to raise the money. We're not, ours isn't. We're raising a bit of money through some of the market stalls and so forth, which will give us, but it won't raise the £3,000 that we've got to find to pay for the march.
But if you put all the pot for all the activities that do go on, there would be enough spare money to pay that.
Well, but then we would have to take it off volunteer action and all the other people that we're giving the. Oh yeah, yeah. But that the reason for put the event on is to give them the opportunity to raise money for their charities, rather than us say we need.
But you don't have any interest in exactly what everybody makes.
We're trying to give them the platform. It's for them to raise money for their individual charities.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I get that.
So I'm not getting the question then.
Well, what I'm thinking of is that if you say that there's lots and lots of money made too many times, people like me will think, well, they can afford to take a little levy off all each organisation to pay towards
I think that's not the case, man. I think
well, that's what I'm thinking.
it's not the case. So each individual organisation raises money for itself.
I understand how it works.
But you're not charging them to have a store. I think that's what.
No,
you're not charging them.
with volunteer action, we're actually trying to cover the hire of the Queen Victoria Hall ourselves for them. So their money that they raise doesn't, it all goes to their charity. Yeah, I mean, we're covering their expenses.
Thank you.
What I would say is that along with the Christmas market, it's a huge and successful showcase for the town.
Yeah.
And it brings in a lot of people that wouldn't normally come to Arundel. And therefore the local economy really gets a big benefit. What I would say for my business on those two particular days, it gives me a 100% increase in turnover. So I wouldn't have a problem with giving a small amount, but I'm not sure about the other retailers. I'm not sure how much the benefit they get. But what I'm saying is, through the hard work of you guys on both events, it's a great thing for the town.
Yeah, we're doing it for the town. There is there's a few business, but our committee is broad spectrum of retired people to local business people.
Any other questions? Thank you, Peter. We'll move on to discuss the matter while we're here, but Thank you for your input. I'm going to ask Max if he wants to share this part of the discussion because I have an interest in that. Oh, I beg your pardon, David.
Yeah, it occurred to me as a result of what Philip has told us that as my wife is a committee member on the care committee and is going to be one of the people dealing with the teams, that perhaps I should make that point as another interest.
Thank you. So with the exclusion of Councillor Adams, Chattock and Wade, I'll ask Max to share the discussion about whether to approve those grants.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, you've heard Philip talk on behalf of the annual Vintage Festival. You have seen the application. The figure around the amount of reserves has been clarified. So we've also heard about that. And realistically, this has been to finance, as some of you will know. It's actually been financed twice. The first time it went to finance was actually last year, at the end of 2025, when there were concerns about the application, particularly around the financial details. And they were asked to resubmit, which they did, and it went to last week's Finance Committee. And the Finance Committee then decided that it should go to full council and give Philip the opportunity, or a representative from the Vintage Festival, the opportunity to speak to this, which they've now done. So what we now need to do is to make a decision on whether or not we wish to award all, part or none of the amounts requested. James.
And can we confirm this is coming out of Budget 95301 grants community support? Is that the right line?
I believe that's the case. I don't have the thing in front of me on my computer. So.
As the discussion raised the sort of benefits to the wider town and marketing the town, does the marketing working group have an opinion about whether £3,000 is a useful amount to spend on marketing the town?
I think it's probably quite good value to market the town, considering that the Christmas market, which was a very popular market, brought in the region of 3,500 to 4,000 people new into the town. We've heard Councillor Gilbert say his business has significant uptake from it. The whole aim of one of the key marketing strategies of this council is to bring new people into this town, and that was explicitly said by Philip. So as far as I'm concerned, I think it's a very good thing. It markets the town. I will certainly be putting a special request into Place Informatics to make sure we have an event, special event report on it, so we can see exactly who's coming in, what exactly, as far as they can do, it's all done on their particular configurations. But I want to know, and it'll be a good experiment to see how many people do come in and where they're coming from. We certainly see from the food market and the Christmas market that there's a definite uptick in people. So as far as I'm concerned, it's good value. Plus we're giving back into the town, so that's good value as well.
I think if I could maybe give an addition to Ian's statement, I would say it's actually very much in line with our vision and strategy document anyway, particularly in terms of promoting the town and supporting local businesses. We've heard from Councillor Gilbert already, and I don't know whether Councillor Osborne will agree that it's really a boost to local businesses. So in some respects it ticks that box as well, is what I'm trying to say. So are there any more points or questions that people would like to raise? Otherwise, what I will do is formulate a proposal. But I'm just looking around the table, and we're all happy that I do that. So I would like to propose that we do agree to grant the full amount as requested. Do I have a second for that? I saw two hands up immediately. I saw yours first here. So, all those in favour of that proposal? Any abstentions? Is that a?
Yeah, I don't feel I ought to be.
Yeah, you probably should be. Yeah. So 2 abstentions, and then we've got the, yeah, you're abstaining as well.
Well, I suppose.
And I guess
On that basis, I voted. Even though I haven't personally
Can I just hands up those who are abstaining?
Abstaining, sorry.
Yeah, abstaining. And those who are against the proposal. So I believe that's carried.
How many abstentions were there in total?
5. Okay, thank you. And Madam Chair, to you.
5 abstentions.
Thank you very much.
5 abstentions.
Thank you. Hopefully we'll see you all there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll now move on to item 25 to 10, Northants Council. I'm fortunate to have Councillor Farrell. Simon.
Good evening. Thankfully, it didn't clash with our meeting on this occasion, which it has done for the last few months. I've got a few developments of council and executive level, which I think are pertinent to Oundle. They may not necessarily be exciting or dramatic, as the Mayor asked me about at the start, but I'll share them all the same. So we had an extraordinary council meeting last month where we considered the devolution and foundation strategic authority status. This is the combined authorities, so Cambridge and Peterborough is the obvious nearest example of a combined authority that's brought in lots of additional devolved monies. The preferred option is to be part of a wider South Midlands devolved authority with Bedford, Mid-Bedfordshire, Luton and Milton Keynes. Sadly, it appears that Luton and Milton Keynes in particular aren't particularly keen to link with us. So we've put that back as our preferred option, but indicated we would wish to apply as a Northamptonshire Foundation Strategic Authority if that wasn't possible. And we are also keeping open the opportunity to join with other authorities, Cambridge and Peterborough being the logical one, and particularly for me, and I made the point that actually for us in this ward, a lot of this ward will look into Cambridge and Peterborough. So we're keeping those options open. And we are watching the local elections in the other areas to see whether there's a likely change of power there, which might actually change the dynamic a little bit. I think there is an expectation that it probably will, because 2 of the vociferous opponents to linking with North and West Northamptonshire are not restanding as leaders of the council. So I'll be interested to see whether that goes forward and whether not the opportunity for a South Midlands combined authority comes back very much onto the agenda, which, I say, the thinking is that will bring more opportunities, more money for the bigger ticket planning, transport and infrastructure developments. I'm also continuing to connect with councillors across the borders. You may or may not be aware of a whole host of different potential developments in West Huntingdonshire, Peterborough, Stamford as part of Rutland developments primarily, and then the Peterborough one, the possible West Wittering development. So there's some potential significant developments just across the border, which will have an impact. So I'm building relationships with councillors in these adjoining wards. I'm not sure necessarily what I'll achieve from it, other than actually getting in on conversations, being up to date with what's happening, knowing when to get involved in consultations and contributing to those consultations. A number of matters have gone to recent executive. So the corporate safety partnership plan was approved by. I'm going to mention a couple of these. I'm at the moment still just trying to work through the strategic document and then trying to translate it down to what it actually means on the ground. So it's all well and good saying we've got this new plan, and the press release will say it's all of these wonderful things. I'm trying to work out actually what does it actually mean, and what might it actually mean for us here in this ward. So, for example, the corporate safety partnership plan talked about areas where there's significant antisocial behaviour to address one of the priority areas. So I know there's been some antisocial behaviour issues here. There are in a couple of other villages around the ward, but actually would they possibly be at a level that might be being experienced in other parts of Northamptonshire? Possibly not. So I'm just trying to work that one out. But there is priority 5. Our neighbourhoods and towns are safer for everyone. So that lends itself to more partnership working in and around the whole of Northamptonshire. And so I'm trying to tease out what that might mean for us. Last week's April executive, the speed management policy was confirmed, which clarifies the process for applying for changes to the speed limit. again, a relevant issue for this ward because Easton on Hill put a petition together to try and change the speed limit through Easton down to 30. So there's greater clarity now on the process for future applications for changing the speed limit. And then highway maintenance and inspection and response framework. Again, this is what I'm trying to work out. What does that actually mean? It's saying lots of fantastic things about how it's going to improve the addressing of the potholes primarily as a main agenda. There's definitely information that lends itself to sort of addressing that. I think there's some more information that we could put out. So, for example, within the paper, it talks about the prioritisation of potholes. And that's not necessarily, it talks about priorities for addressing them, but doesn't explain how you get to that priority. So if I run over a pothole regularly between home and Kingston, which is a journey I do regularly, that is a big issue. That's a priority pothole for me. But actually, it's not a priority pothole for the number of vehicles on the road, the speed being travelled on that road, that it's on the edge of the road, not in the centre of the road, and so on. So I think actually producing information about how we prioritise, I think would be a good thing. It doesn't fill the pothole yet, but at least gives a better understanding of the basis upon which potholes are addressed. I think the key thing about this one is that whilst the administration will point to years of underinvestment in roads and the fact that they inherited the contract, as all politicians do, we all blame the last bunch, don't we? I think they will still use that argument, but actually I think this policy is this administration starting to take a bit of ownership of themselves for this. It'd be to see that they may possibly try and bat that away, but my impression is that they have announced this as their attempt to try and address the policy, address the approach from the contractors, improve the approach. And I think for me, that's them starting to take a bit more of taking ownership of that responsibility rather than it was all the last bunch fault or it's a lack of investment of government. So I would suggest we hold them to account a bit more on that basis. As an aside, I stopped and talked with a road inspector and a pair of emergency repairers in the last few weeks. They visibly flinched when I stopped my car, got out and started walking towards them, which is reflective, and I reassured them that I was a good guy. But sadly, it was on the basis of the amount of abuse that they get in doing the job that we're all demanding that they do, sadly. So sadly, the people who are addressing the big issue that is raised by everyone everywhere, we're abusing the people who are addressing it, which is, I think, is a very sad state of affairs. So, a couple of other things deferred from corporate scrutiny. Deferred to corporate scrutiny. There is discussion about the Ward Empowerment Fund and a likelihood that it will be curtailed. It will be put, this year will be the last year. What they are proposing is to create a new Youth Empowerment Fund. So half the money will go into a Youth Empowerment Fund. This year, the other half will be available for the Ward Empowerment Fund, but we've got to spend it by July, and then that'll be it. I'm disappointed. I think it's a good little scheme, but sadly, for every year for the last 5 years, the councillors have only spent 50%, on average 50% of the money available. £350,000 has been lost to the voluntary sector from councillors not using the member empowerment scheme. And I think that's absolutely shocking. If I think about all the voluntary sector organisations who could have made blooming good use of investment, if that investment may pay forward. So actually, I think it's probably a logical decision based on past councillors failing to use the scheme to its full effect. I'm disappointed if it does go, but the figures speak for themselves. And then we discussed last night at Democracy Standards a review of the petition scheme. There was a petition in Easton on Hill, which was ultimately unsuccessful in terms of reaching target numbers. We just pared the numbers down a bit, applied a bit of learning from that experience, and therefore the petitions will become easier for those in rural areas to actually reach the target numbers. There's a threshold. You have to reach certain numbers before certain action will be taken, and Easton just missed out on that one. And yet they got 3/4 of the village signing the petition. So it's basically making the petition scheme a more useful tool for the community. Couple of things from me. I've been involved in a cross-party working group looking at the future leisure management options. So all the leisure centres across North Northants are due to go out to a new contract for the next 2 years. So I proposed a cross-party working group on the basis of a big decision. It's going to have an impact over the next 10 years. The pressure on finances as such, there's going to be real pressure on that. So I think it needed a cross-party approach to it. to try to cross-party consensus about actually where does leisure fit. It's a non-statutory service. Where does leisure fit in the services? And equally, what about those areas that don't have a building provided? So clearly in this ward, we have no building. We have no leisure centre in this ward. The leisure provision is the school. That is right, isn't it? Yeah. So well, probably everywhere actually, isn't it? So, and then the other key issue for the last few weeks has been the possible traveller site on the A605 at Warmington, and I'm making some daily checks of the site, as I'm sure plenty of others from the parish councils and parish meetings are doing so, and we wait for the next step in what appears to be the playbook for that, and hopefully we can address that. I will be following up with Martin Griffiths. We had a meeting with the parish councils, Bangor Town Council parish meetings around that area, and we got Martin Griffiths, the leader of the council, along to it, and Eddie McDonald, the then deputy leader of the council, along to it. One of the things he said in the course, which was a bit of an aside, but Martin talked about the fact that the executive discussed that same day the question about response to parish and town councils. One of the common issues, probably the most common issue during the course of this last year, is going to parish council meetings, I've had parish councils go, we never get a response, we have to wait ages for a response, we get holding emails but never get the answers. We don't believe that we're being treated appropriately, fairly discourteous and so on. So that's an issue I'm flagging, and it was good to hear that same day it had been discussed at the executive. I'm going to follow up with Martin to find out, well, it's been discussed, what does that actually mean? And I've just spoken to the clerk this evening as well to also find out. I get certain emails telling me about what's happening in the ward, but actually to the town and parish councils what emails do you get? And do we get the same emails, or would you get different emails? And actually, would it be useful for a bit more of a sort of CCing people in, so there's a better exchange of information and so on? So that's a separate piece of work I'll pick up with the clerk and probably with another clerk in one of the parishes. So finally, there's a cluster meeting. I've organised a cluster meeting on Monday evening this next week of the town and parish councils and parish meetings. Got a really positive response when I proposed the idea. We'll see how this one goes. Hopefully it goes well, and we'll see what happens next. I have also suggested a similar cluster meeting for clubs and organisations who own or lease facilities, and probably looking at funding opportunities in particular for them. And again, seeing where sharing of information, recruiting volunteers, promoting yourself, funding applications. Less of a positive response to that one so far. I'm going to do a bit of a nudge on that one. But yeah, just trying to get people together and share experiences, share knowledge, and potentially work together. So sorry, slightly longer than I intended, but yeah, hopefully that was useful. And happy to answer any questions on anything I said or anything that perhaps I didn't cover that you might have done.
Anybody have any questions? Simon, Mike? Just one question, Simon. You talked about antisocial behaviour and the fact that outlaw is down here and somewhere else.
Might be, I don't know.
But, this is the wrong approach. If you have antisocial behaviour, it needs to be dealt with. It doesn't matter if it's tiny amount of antisocial behaviour or a lot.
Yeah.
Because if it's a tiny amount, you don't deal with it, it gets bigger.
Yeah.
And this thing about, bigger or smaller is a nonsense. And I think, NNC need to say we're going to enforce a policy regardless, and that's the policy. If the NNC fails to deliver the policy, then hopefully we can feedback that it's not working. But just to dismiss a small area of antisocial behaviour is not, I think, a great idea.
I think that's the risk, and I think that's the risk we face with a lot of things within Northamptonshire in terms of where we compare with other wards against various sets of data. One of the parishes, I won't name them because I don't want to be tagged as being an area. One of the parishes have indicated they would like to do some work in trying to address antisocial behaviour, and I submitted a member inquiry to that effect and said, okay, who can we talk to? What can we do? What options are there? And I'd have to say I've got a very positive and immediate response. It's probably the quickest response I've got back from a member inquiry. So I'm hoping that will help me understand, okay, maybe if you ask, you get, or work out actually what the support is available. And actually, if you feel that you would like me to make that same query, and I'm aware there have been some issues in the last few months, I'm happy to make that same query and say, actually, yes, Oundle would quite like to have some conversations and work out how this particular priority 5, how we can work on priority 5 within the Oundle context. So happy to pick that one up as well, if you'd like to meet me to do so.
Thank you. Any other questions? I have one. You mentioned the member empowerment scheme that's underspent. What do we need to do to get our share?
So I'm pleased to say that this ward, we weren't underspent. I say we weren't underspent. There's one small £400 grant that's still just going through the process, but otherwise we've spent £5,600 in issuing grants, one of which was to St Peter's Church. And then for the £3,000 that we've got this year, or appears to be the indicative figure for this year, I've had one inquiry already from an Oundle group, who, in fact, I think you put them on, someone put them on to me from the town council. So basically, there's a conversation started about one Oundle group, and interestingly, I gave Philip the details as well, but he may not necessarily need that now.
So the answer is we didn't need to know.
I've made my background is voluntary sector. I've made a real effort to go out and try and facilitate grants. Actually, the St Peter's one actually came from John. John facilitated that one for St Peter's. So,
Cool. Any other questions? Thank you.
excuse me, about the state.
As
That's right.
as you do. Thank you. Right. Into the town business, item 25 to 11, town matters, 21101, to consider the agenda format for the annual town meeting to be on Saturday, the 30th of May. I'll ask Max to speak on this, but I will just say we spent almost 40 minutes on the first three items. We've got 29 more items to get through in 80 minutes. So I hope we can all be succinct, because we need to focus on the quality of the discussions. I don't want to curtail any discussions. At the same time, if we concise, that would be good too. Max.
Okay, I'll try and be succinct. As you know, we agreed at the previous meeting to move the town meeting Saturday morning and hold it again at QBH. In doing that, I spoke with the town clerk, about 2 weeks ago now, Emma. And between us and Rebecca, we came up with a draft agenda for the meeting. Obviously, having it on Saturday, we wanted to be slightly different in that the plan is to have not just a series of presentations, but to have tables or stalls that councillors will man around certain subjects. So I don't know if Emma, you want to take up on that?
Yeah. I think I've included a list.
In which case then I can do it. So
Yeah.
it's in your pack. So the idea is that we will, from internally, have councillors manning a kind of desk or table on marketing, finance, estates, and potentially markets as well, not marketing. But then we were also going to invite externally Staunch, which we actually did agree on previously. I'm not quite sure this is actually quite right. Flettonfield and
Footpath walking.
yeah, footpaths. Sorry, John's just doing something. And also to have a stall on, it says OTC markets.
Which looks like it's been covered at the top as well. So that's, yeah.
So I think it's, we also talked about the police and whether or not they would want to have a stall separate from being able to talk on the actual agenda. So I think I'll shut up there. What we've got to do is to finalise that plan. So it's really up for you to provide comment, feedback, whether we feel the balance is right, and then Henry and I can start putting flesh on the bones.
Any questions or comments of Max? David?
Sadly, the only feedback I've got has been relatively negative about that particular Saturday morning. And I also look at it and just see that it says 10 to 1. Personally, I think that's in danger of being a bit off-putting. Because I can think of a lot of people who might look at it and say, I'm not going to a 3-hour meeting and not go at all.
I think we should clarify that. So the intention is that councillors will be there from 10 to 1. The actual meeting, because don't forget we're having stalls where people can drop in and ask questions. The idea is to make it very much a public meeting in that sense. But the meeting part of it will be the usual just over an hour and a half. And we need to make that clear.
Yeah, we just need to know that time, then we can advertise. So let's say are you going to have 10 till 12 as people can get a coffee, have a look, have a chat, and then 12 till 1 is the presentation.
Yeah.
That seems reasonable.
Any other comments or thoughts? Yes, Simon.
I think it's a good idea still to put a stall there, because John asked us at the previous meeting to ask around people's views on storage and how we might support them. And at 23 people I asked, only 2 of them had heard of storage. So clearly one of the issues is then getting the message out there. So it's a good thing that they're doing.
Thank you. Last year we also got some surveys. We surveyed people's opinions. We got some feedback which was useful for the strategy thing we did. So I think that's something that's worth considering. Well,
Just on the information tables, is an expectation of having something physically to show a banner of some sort, and if that's the case, we need to factor that into the time frame, working pattern, producing it. Or it's going to go minimal at it, instead of saying marketing work. We could do that.
So I think what we're trying to do here is agree the principle of what, the agenda and the principle of the way we're going to organise the meeting. If we've agreed that, what I meant by putting flesh on the bones is then going to the people who we hopefully will man or person the tables and then start to work out, well, what do you want to be there? What do you need handouts? Do you see what I mean? That's why we've got the flesh on the bones. So I think we've got to agree the bones first, and then start to put flesh on it.
wonderful. Thank you, Rob. Any other comments to carry on?
Okay. Are you happy with that, Helen?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we can start advertising it now. We were just waiting. Yeah.
We'll need to
Yeah.
take it a bit further. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Max. Item 2512, council matters. 1201 is to receive the mayor's report. Any questions on the mayor's report? What I'd like to do though is just add to it and thank councillors for their support during the year. It's been an interesting year. 40% of councillors were not here this time last year, so it's been quite an interesting journey for those of us who have been here before. I hope it's been interesting and enlightening to those who have joined us in the last 12. But as well as getting 40% of new councillors, or despite, or maybe because 40% were new, we still managed to agree a vision, we still managed to agree strategies for the council. We'll come back to that in a later point. But I think we should be really pleased. I'm delighted with the progress we've made in terms of setting a vision, setting 4 strategies, marketing strategy, we've made great progress, building strategy, great progress under Ian and Mike respectively. We've timed up our financial controls, James has been involved in that. We've done a lot of work on traffic, which I know Ian and Phil have been involved in, which is fabulous. The Retail Crime Initiative, I think, is a huge thing for the town, and that's been good. It's interesting that Simon's mentioned it, I suppose. We've seen the marketplace trees sorted out. Hopefully we're going to see the marketplace parking outside Tesco sorted out this year. So I think it's been a good year. I think it puts us in a good position for the next 3 years of this council's tenure. So I'd like to thank you for all the hard work you guys have done over the last 12 months, ably supported by the clerk and the rest of the council. So that's all good. We'll move on to item 251202 to receive the clerk's report. Again, items are in the pack that you've seen, so I don't tend to go through them, but I do want to ask if anybody has any questions or queries of the clerk or her report. Wonderful. Pretty good one for that, 25-21203 to consider request to carry out metal detecting on OTC open spaces. This is a new request. Interestingly, having agreed it before, and we made a point here that having agreed it, we should put that on social media. As a result of that, we've had a second request to have a detectorist approved. This is not cage fighting. That would be a different kind of request.
Maybe they know something, John.
Maybe they are. Any questions or on this, Max?
Yes, very quickly. I didn't have the email in front of me, but I don't think they talk about giving them to the museum. The point is, if you find anything, you actually have to register it with whatever it's called. I can send you
Yeah.
details. And they don't refer to that in the email.
So thank you. Last time we said they could do it, we needed to make sure they had insurance. And I think with this other thing, we need just to make sure both of those.
Yeah.
Commission give James.
Can we have this matter on the next estates committee agenda so that we can agree a policy? Because I think it's silly that full council has to consider every request. So let's get
that's a
you
good idea.
authorised to just make the decisions.
So I don't think that is personally
Yeah.
a good idea to implement. Unless we just do so I'll take it tacit approval.
Yeah.
Okay.
Item 25-1204, 1205, 1206 and 1207. I'm going to take really as one. We discussed these items at the F&GP meeting last week. We need these approved at this meeting because pretty soon we've got to fill in the AGAR report, the annual governance and audit report, which this year will include an assertion that we have got these policies in place. At F&GP, we discussed them at considerable length and determined or decided or agreed that we weren't going to draft those policies again in committee because it would take us way too long. We would not agree anyway. We passed the matter back to the clerk to resolve, but for now, given the immediacy of the need to have these passed, unless anybody has got any massive issue with the policies as written, I'm going to suggest, and I'm happy to take them if people do want to take it that way, but my suggestion is that we propose, second, and approve all of these policies in one go rather than go through them individually. So my first question is everybody happy with that approach, or would they like us to go through each policy separately?
I'm happy.
I'm going to say yes.
I'm happy.
Good. I'm sure you are happy. Emma's happy. So in that case, I would propose that we accept improve the IT policy, the data protection policy, the Ian, I don't know.
That's right. It's for one question. Yes. I think it was written when we all had iPads. No?
No.
Okay, well, I'm just looking at it. It says the scope is personal devices used to access council systems, which are nearly all of these. And we agree that we're going to limit personal use on them. And we're not going to install electronic software.
It's a combination of staff and councillors, though.
But this just needs to put the words on OTC devices.
Oh, sweet. Oh.
Sorry.
That's a very, no, it's very important because we need to look at it. So with that one exception, does anybody have anything else they want to raise? Okay, with that one exception, for which thanks Ian, I will ask for council's agreement that we approve the IT policy, the data protection policy, the data breach policy, and the social media policy. Do I have a second? Councillor Chesser, thank you. All those in favour? Brilliant, thank you very much. That over to you, Dan. Item 25-21208 to receive the monthly strategy report. I'll give you a brief update on the mayor's report, and you'll have seen that. Anybody, any questions on monthly strategy update? Leads us on nicely to item 25-21209 to agree to undertake an annual strategy review. The proposal is within your papers. I'm happy to take any questions or move straight to the discussion or vote. Anybody have any thoughts or questions or challenges? Mike.
As well, I think with the change of mayor next month, it might be an idea to think about deferring it for a month until the new mayor has decided, you know, what's important to them. And I'm sure it will be, but if it's not, then it'll have to be able to do something they like to.
Thanks.
I would say that we should actually try and agree it now, because this is about strategy for the whole council, regardless of who's mayor.
And I agree with that, because it's a structural thing rather than a personal thing, in my view. Strategies might change, the vision shouldn't change, but strategies might change because the world changes. And if we don't undertake a regular review, I think we are fooling ourselves that the world doesn't change. So I accept your point, and I think it's a good one. And I think every mayor should have to make the decision whether they want to continue with it or not. But in this view, if we agree with this policy, the mayor has to tell council or convince council that we don't need it because it's in place anyway. And there's a good reason not to have a strategy review. So I'd rather have it in place unless the mayor is convincing enough that we don't have to have it. But, you know, it's your call, not mine.
I think I'll just add to that, that you mentioned before in one of your earlier reports that this time last year, something like 40% of us weren't here, or whatever it was. And I think that's also important in relation to this, because even though the strategy was discussed at the beginning of the year, I think particularly when you're new, you're still finding your feet, grasping around. And actually, I do think it's important to look at it a year on, because we've matured as a council, and our feelings may well have changed or developed. So I'm just generally think it's a good thing now.
David, I just want to get really picky about it. It describes conducting a strategic review. My first kind of question was, what is a strategic review and how do you go about that review process? Actually, what we seem to be talking about is not a strategic review, arguably, but a review of strategy, which I think is slightly different. And I'd rather that was the wording, because I think that's what's intended. I'm still a little concerned about what it looks like in practice. How is this review going to be managed? And I see the reference to inviting everybody to facilitate and so on, but there's no time scales for any of this. There's no indication as to who specifically takes the lead. I'm assuming it would be the mayor from time to time and so on. I'm happy with it as a principle. I just think we might need to have something slightly fleshed out so that by the time we get to the start of the next year, this is a little bit clearer as to exactly how this is to work and what exactly it's going to do over what time scale.
I think that's fair. Anybody else have any comments on the proposal? Wonderful. In that case, I would take this away and flesh it out and make it clearer, in my view, that when he comes back, it will be Max's Or the new mayors.
So don't make any.
Okay, so I will ask for approval now. I'll take away David's comments and Mike's comments and bring it back to the table. We'll move on to item 25 to 12.10 to receive the latest PLR update from David Fuller. Again, that was in the pack. Again, ready to be read. David's very keen that we continue the relationship and is working hard on it. Does anybody have any questions or comments on the PLR report? Max?
It's not on the report per se, it's about presentation. Can we please not circulate papers via an email as an email on the paper? I want to see the paper as not an email, but then takes me to attachments and blah, 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 blah. It should have been here as, because there are various attachments to the email. You have to kind of go through various stages. I just think that it should all be together in one place.
Okay, so
That's how I received it.
that's not to do with
Well-
the PLR. I think what you're referring to maybe is there is a way to put all the documents into one PDF
Yeah,
document, which you've got all the papers in one
Yeah.
go. But that's not about the PLR report. That's something
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I think we'll discuss with them.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Any questions or comments on the PLR report? Update, I should say. Seeing none, we can count that as received. So thank you to David for his hard work on that. Item 25.213 financial items. So 215.213.01 to approve the bank rec balance sheet and budget for March. This will be the last year, the end of our financial year. We're being asked to approve it. Before we go to approval, do we have any questions or comments or challenges to the financial statements? Okay, in that case, could I have somebody propose we approve those? Councillor Affleck, thank you. Can I have somebody second that we approve those? Councillor Clark, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Item 25.213.02, payments for March 26. The proposition is that there are two propositions in this item. Proposition 1, that the schedule of payments for March as presented at this item are paid. I'll take that separately from proposition 2. Do I have any questions on proposition 1? James?
So very difficult, given it's the period 12. But just to set a precedent for the new year going forward, should this council assume that if the payments have been presented on the schedule for payment with no further comment, that they are all within budget? So where we're paying Mowerman or whatever, can you confirm that you and or Paul will have sat down and gone, the budget for Mowerman is X and the total amount of payments for this year still falls within that,
Yeah.
and the budget is not exceeded?
I can for the mower man.
I think we're talking about all payments.
Yeah, so is it implicit that, like, because the finance officer and you, Clark, present these payments to us with no further commentary, that they are all or have all been checked on that basis, or do we need to check that?
They will have all been checked by Paul, but I'm just actually thinking that I may be a month early with this particular second part of this.
We'll do the second part in a minute. So, the first
So
part-
it might be that we
You
wait
raised
till
a general
April,
point, aren't you, James, that
till May.
when the payments come out, the supposition is that they are all within budget unless otherwise stated, but I don't think that's the case, is it?
Sorry?
I don't think it's true to say, or is it true to say, that if payments are presented for payment, that they are all paid within budget?
Yes, yes. I mean, they're all of those. I mean, the annual ones are things like pest control.
I've not talked about anything else. I've talked about the scheduled payments for March, or February, or January, or December. When we get those list of payments, are all those payments, how all those payments are paid within the approved budget?
Yes, they are, but unless we've had to bring something to, like we are in a little while, bring something to the council meeting because there isn't enough budget.
So the answer to your question appears to be, if they're on there, they're within budget. If they aren't within budget, then they'll be approved separately.
Mhm.
Right, wonderful. So, any other questions or comments on the payment schedule for March? Could I have a proposal that those are accepted and paid? Councillor Affleck, and a second that those are approved and paid. Councillor Gilbert, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. The second proposition, I think, is probably for May.
Yeah, it's a month early.
As far as questions, we will get a list of those, won't we? I can't
Yes.
remember that.
It's within that spreadsheet. So
Yeah.
as I am a month early, you've got the ones.
There will be a list.
Yeah, it's the final page on the spreadsheet.
Thank you. Item 25-21303 to receive the minutes from F&GP meeting held last week. I've got nothing to add to those minutes. Do anybody have any questions on those minutes? No, we regard those as duly received. Item 25-21304 to approve quotes to repair emergency lighting at Betton House and agree that funding will come from Betton Reserves. This actually links back to the conversation we just had about payment schedules. This is outside of budget. This hasn't been and so the request is approval. So does anybody have any questions as to, first of all, the need, and second of all, the budget? James.
So to confirm that the intention is to add an additional line, just as we have done for each individual capex that we are intending to do, and then adjust the releases from reserve line on the income line in coordination.
As we discussed last week, I want to sit down with you so we read that policy and get it sorted. So it's clear when we say we're going to take money out of reserves, what impact that actually has on the reserves figure. So that's good financial management. We will do that separately, James. As far as this particular proposal goes, does anybody have any questions on the need for emergency lighting? Does anybody think we shouldn't?
We would probably have insurance problems if we do.
I agree. So I'm going to propose that we approve these quotes. Can I have a seconder to approve these quotes? Councillor Affleck, all those in favour? Wonderful, thank you.
And before you move
Emma?
on,
Well, I was just going to say they've already started doing it this week because, as the Estates Committee said, the work should start.
Oh, in what case, why did you come here?
Well, it had to be approved, but in other words, it wasn't going to not be approved. This is just rubber stamp here. That was the information that I received.
as a point forward, Mr. Mayor, there were two things that needed to come up from the States, and I only see one of them on the agenda, but there is some good news about that. In a similar manner, the repairs to the play equipment used some expenditure on Polytech. During the meeting, I couldn't find the line, but I have subsequently found the line. So full council, Estates again said, because this is an emergency, Estates officer should get on and fix it. And we thought it had to come to full council because there wasn't a line at all, but there is actually a capex line in there for playground equipment R&M, so that can go back to Estates and just be approved within the existing budget.
Okay, wonderful. We will move on then to item 25-21305 to receive information regarding session 10, which has been included on the 26 AGAR report. Again, information included in the pack. Does anybody have any questions or comments for the clerk? Questions for the clerk or comments about the session 10? Wonderful. So information duly received. Emma? 25-21306, that has already been discussed. We then move on therefore to item 25-21307, which is to agree that OTC undertakes a complete review of activities to demonstrate planning committees being achieved. This was discussed at F&GP last week. James, can you talk to this? or answer questions on it. Actually, I'll just ask if there are any questions on the proposal, which I think is included in the pack.
I have one. Item number 3 is to identify alternative means of delivery. Does that mean the Class Working Party has to, even if there is no alternative means of delivery? So, playgrounds or markets or something else. Do we have to do that every year?
No. So to take your questions in reverse order, the best practice is to review on a periodic basis, certainly not annually, but not decadely, that you're making sensible choices about what services you offer. So every now and again, we should at least think, are we really interested in having 50 benches, or would 20 benches suffice? And then within that provision of that service, for example, mowing or painting or whatever, we've got the mower man doing some, we've got our guys doing some. Are our guys actually doing it half the time that mower man takes, and therefore it would make sense to get our guys to do what mower man's doing, or vice versa, rather than just consistently sitting here every year going, well, that bit's mowed by mower man and that bit's mowed by our guys, and that's how it's always been and that's how it always will be. So it's just breaking down the steps of things that might be considered. Nothing is saying that you must go and find 5 different mower guys or anything like that.
So might it be better reworded to something like identify if an alternative means of delivery exists, rather than saying you have to find an alternative means?
Yes, if there are alternative means. So maybe allow for the fact that there might not be in the wording.
I thought the wording allowed for that, but if others reading it don't disagree, then I'm happy.
It seems so that you propose that we identify every activity, internal and external.
Yeah. So that's
define
going
the
through
service level.
Yeah.
Identify alternative means. It sounds like it's taken as read that there will be alternative means.
So you just add where appropriate.
Or possible.
With that one amendment, are you happy with that?
Sure.
Wonderful. Any other questions of James? This is going to come to you quite a lot. Any questions from your comment?
Yes, just to let you know that it's not going to start imminently. It will be later on in the year.
When suitable.
Yeah.
But subject to that, you have no other comments on?
No, other than one other thing is that because the time this is going to take, and obviously my work won't just stop so I can do this, it may be worth that we look at breaking it down into sections. So you look at one particular section and then, so it may take longer, but I think it's better to do it that way.
One thing that I raised, was I don't want this to get in the way of the strategy and take resources away from it. But we have discussed that, and there's a sense that it can be incorporated if it's managed well.
So this is my point. How it will take away all the traction because you work at that level.
It's something we need to keep going. And the strategic thing we talked about might help with that if it's helped with James.
So, I endeavoured to cover all those points by saying, A, this is an 18-month activity. Certainly not expected to start until at least June, when the new structure is in place and whoever that is running that. And it's not an activity in itself, but we have to budget every year. And as part of our budget process, we ought to be considering what we do and how we do it. And really, it's getting something on the books for Emma to be able to actually come back to us as committee members and committee chairs to say, this looks like an area where we might be able to make a saving can I have some support from you guys or us guys to do some work here? So it's getting something on the books to allow Emma to ask us to help, not for us to beat Emma to say you must do this.
What would the next step be? If we agree this proposal, what is the next step?
So, for example, on estates where we discuss benches, first question when we're about to spend £10,000 perhaps refurbishing those benches is, do we actually still need all these benches? And you might go, well, that should be a little work stream under this thing where by September we should have decided that out of the 50 that we've got, we actually only want 30. And those are the ones, and actually we'll keep the best 30. The worst 20 we'll throw away. We won't even bother refurbishing them. And whatever the outcome happens to be. So we work through it on the basis of what comes up in.
So essentially, some of these are policy decisions, which don't necessarily involve you in a great deal of administrative work. If the estates committee decides we don't want that many, we need this many.
Yeah.
There'll be work around then determine which you throw away, and not going to get into the detail because that might hide the basic fact that some of this is policy and some of it might be operational. Who's going to be responsible for overseeing this? Council, the clerk, estates, finance.
Well, ultimately, as the paper says, this is all actually within the purview of the clerk, who is responsible for ensuring that the best value for each activity that we're doing, and there's a tremendous bit on an annual basis. So,
but the clerk is responsible to the council. So should the clerk be responsible to the full council and help and should look at it, or is the clerk responsible to finance for looking at this? Or
that's a council decision. I have no opinion.
John, if I could say something, if for example the benches
here and then
if the benches then came up, for example, under estates, then let's just assume we do decide to get rid of a few benches, then that's going to be the estates thing. But if something comes up on the finance about grants, for example, then we could say, okay, actually we need to review something about grants. And once we've done the review, we could talk in with Emma about it, because ultimately people come to Emma for grants, if you wish, and then Emma brings them to the council. So it just depends on sort of where the source is.
so now that we answered the question, I'm going to take them and come back to one.
Well, it says that it's up to the clerk to convene working groups, which is fine as long as the clerk's on board with it. If that working party is charged with identifying every activity that's undertaken and defining service levels and scope of that activity, realistically, that working party is going to have to come back to full council. I mean, just suppose the working party said, routine recreation areas, something like that. They're not giving, presumably, the working party the power to junk something like that. So it's going to have to come back here. So you're right, there's a difference here between policy and to some extent micromanagement over the number of benches or what have you, where a respectful council will probably defer to the estates and say, look, we don't want to spend half an hour debating whether we do or don't have a bench in location X. But some of this is far more fundamental and is going to have to be discussed in full council, which means that this working party will presumably have to make recommendations to full council. And whether it makes, as it were, one composite recommendation after a period of work, and whether it does it incrementally as it starts to look at things, I think it will have to work out how to do it with the clerk, because quite frankly, we've never attempted anything quite like this before. It's in a sense been part of the whole way we've operated, rather than sitting down and saying, there's got to be this process to do it. I'm not against the idea of it, but I think we're going to find it an interesting exercise logistically to do it.
In a way, that kind of is my point. I think individual aspects will go to individual committees, and individual committees will raise individual aspects because that's in the terms of reference. But who oversees the whole process? So if we agree tonight that this review should be undertaken, subject to the amendment that was made, subject to all the conversations we had here, when does the clerk report back to council? Or does finance report back to council to say this is in progress, this has happened, this hasn't happened? How do we know that the policy we're about to agree or not is being carried out unless we as a council have oversight of the process and the success or failure or achievements or non-achievements of the process? And whilst I accept finance can look at some of it, and states can look at some of it, and marketing look at some of it, who has ultimate oversight? So I'll take David, but I'll take him first. Sorry, and then take
I was just going to say, given that the clerk is, if you like, ultimately the prime mover, the clerk gives us a report every month. There's going to be part of the report, presumably, which we'll deal with.
Right, okay, right, we'll have a conversation now.
So then, seems to be actually a report back to the council. Whether from council then delegates parts of it up to committees or something, will be ultimately a decision for us. And the clerk will soon discover whether that process is feasible or not.
Mm.
So what we're saying then is that if we pass this, we're giving that responsibility to the clerk.
Well,
you're responsible for running this.
Now, you're talking about a working party. Now, normally a working party is formed by the council. The council appoints those, or people volunteer to go on to that working party. An officer is possibly attends that working party, but it tends to be the council. You'll pick somebody that will chair that working party. They will drive that, and then that reports back into full council or estates. So if you're talking about a working party, that is how a working party works. The clerk doesn't chair the working party because the clerk doesn't chair meetings.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you very much.
I think it's on the your job description, isn't it? Something like that. And seeing value for money.
Well, yeah, I mean that's part of when you're looking for quotes and things. So if you know I'm tasked with doing something, yeah, yeah. I don't spend all my days going around trying to decide whether we're getting money, value for money, because we've done that in the beginning stages when we're doing certain things. Yeah.
But it's still a function of it.
I'll continue, David.
More ideas, more questions on that, which is concerning quite considerably actually, because on the one hand we had a conversation around the need for X number of benches. That's very much a individual policy decision. On the other hand, there's a question here around the efficiency of tendering services to external suppliers. They are so different. Yeah. And then forming the working party to deal with which of those aspects and have the report. So in its current format, I don't think there are answers to questions to convince me of this. And I think additionally, whenever we consider quotes, we have and should have in our minds but we should have a value for money discussion. We certainly have each time we haven't had any quotes coming through. And that's when I first read this, is this a verification check or if we've had consideration on a number of quotes. But I think the scope shift here is concerning.
Thank you. David and Max.
I mean, just listening to the clerk, it becomes obvious and you can't or shouldn't be looking to implement this exactly as it's drafted. Logically, therefore, if somebody's going to chair a working party of such importance, there's only one person who can chair it, that has to be the mayor. Clerk might be there to advise the working party, but her role would be as advisor to the working party, and presumably the mayor will either look for, but presumably will look for volunteers to do this, And at our next meeting in May, we appoint all the committees and working parties and what have you. So then, if we're going to do it, that's the point at which this working party gets convened.
Thank you, David. Max, you had a point.
Yes, sorry, I thought you were looking at it.
No, just making sure that I'm picking everybody up.
I very much agree with what David's just said, and I would repeat that. I just want to make a slightly new point, and that is that we, as a council, obviously have to justify, or we should justify, why we are spending public money the way we are. And to my mind, what this proposal does is actually highlight that central matter, to my mind. And yes, the devil will be in the detail. Yes, there are uncertainties about how this will play out and how different committees will get involved. But to my mind, that's not a reason not to do it or not to try and do it. And what I would like to do is to say, let's agree this proposal very much as I've used the term already, putting flesh on bones. What we're agreeing here are the bones of an idea that we've got to then start putting flesh onto. And it may be that in 12 months we've abandoned it for all sorts of reasons, being impractical. But I do think, given that we have a responsibility to the public, we should at least try and answer some of the questions that James has poses.
Thank you, Max. Alison?
Yeah, can I just clarify, is this looking at things that are already in practice or already occurring, or is it things that have gone past? If it's things that are coming in the future, obviously, as we agree those, they need to be agreed as to be valued for money before they happen. So I'm just unsure as to what we're reviewing here. If something can just
Every activity.
every activity. Okay.
That's what's in the proposal. I'm gonna.
I just feel it would be something that is done automatically for things that are coming. It should be, shouldn't it? You know, so.
I think it's more historic and current.
Yeah.
Or more current because historic can't change.
Yeah.
My concern, having listened to everybody, my concern is that if we agree to a proposal that has this many questions, are we causing issues for the future? A different way of looking at this, and I'm happy to say that as a proposal, but I'll make an amendment to the proposal that is, if we get a formal working party to look at this, I think it's something that should be done. The person who wants to chair, or the person that the mayor, whoever he or she may be next year, wants to chair that working group, should draw up slightly tighter parameters before we agree this proposal. I think the essence of it is good. I think the essence of it is right. The philosophy behind it is right. The too many questions have been raised to agree it in its current form. That would be my proposal.
I just want to kind of endorse what you're saying is, in recent experience of setting up working parties, every working party has to write terms of reference. That terms of reference has to be agreed by the council.
Yeah.
I think that is probably a very fair way. I'm agreeing with you on the philosophy of this, but I think there's a lot of questions. And if we go back to that working party, get a proper terms of reference set up, that can come back to full council agreement and we can move forward.
So are you saying we should agree with this proposal subject to those terms of reference?
Yes.
Right, so if you want to make that proposal, do you have a second of that proposal? Right, Evans? Sorry, Councillor Evans. All those in favour of that proposal? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in favour of that proposal. All those against that proposal? 3. So that proposal is carried.
But who is the working party?
Well, that was my point. We just as a council carried a proposal that we should undertake a complete review of activities to demonstrate value for money is being achieved. I don't know who's led that working party. that was why I had a counter proposal, but that's been
But is that not the case? We've agreed that we're establishing a new working party so that when we have our meeting in a month or so's time, that's one of the working parties that we can have popular.
I'm sorry, I missed that as a proposal. So that's the proposal, right? And that's what you said. Is that what everyone's agreed to?
Yes.
But I have said I cannot devote any time to this at the moment. So, but there will be a case if you will need some sort of officer in there, because he'll be talking about or considering things that you don't really know much about. Like, you don't know what processes are in place. You don't know. I mean, I don't know how far you want to go down. Do you want to go down where we buy the paper from? You know,
I think what we'll do is somebody will come back with a proposal. They'll come back with that proposal without having to talk to you first. It'll be very difficult to get through.
Yeah.
So I'd be amazed if the proposal came back without having involved you.
yeah. I'm just a bit confused now as to what's been agreed.
So somebody is going to come back with a proposal, perhaps next month. If they come back with a proposal without having talked to you, it'll be a surprise.
I think that's unlikely, John.
Yeah, it's amazingly unlikely.
But sorry, totally down. Haven't we just agreed with that?
The proposal is that the working party is formed to look at it.
Is that in minutes? The vote in the report. What is actually that specific proposal? That wasn't stated.
I don't even know what to write at the minute.
Okay, we'll do this again. I hope this works for you. Max has proposed that if working with people, so that it's on
It's
record.
actually much more.
Yeah, I'm happy with it. And what I'm proposing is that a working party is formed to look at undertaking the task of reviewing all the systems as set out in the paper that's done. That working party will be formed probably the May election. Then that working party will agree a terms of reference, which will then put to full council for full agreement and make it move forward.
For that second, anybody have any thoughts on that?
I mean, logically, the clerk doesn't need to be involved necessarily in drawing up the terms of reference for council approval. The working party, whoever it ends up, drafts those terms of reference. That comes back. Clerk will obviously be in a position at that meeting to express concern if there was concern for terms of reference. But my guess is that if we're simply going to set up a quote-unquote value for money working party that is to draft terms of reference, you can have this document in front of it, but actually it's something of a clean sheet, because all it's doing is saying, all right, how would we as a working party actually do this job with which we've got a principle? And I don't think, I'd be very surprised actually if anybody around the table actually objected to that. It's when we get down to the detail and the practicalities of making it work, as I think the Mayor said earlier, we may discover that it just can't. Well, we won't know unless we try, and I'm happy to second Ian's proposal, although I thought somebody else seconded it originally, so I don't want to tread on any toes.
Have you got that proposal?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So, proposed Councillor Quarterman, seconded Councillor Shaw. Do you second it?
Yes, or no? I hear I'm at the second.
Right. We'll have a vote again. All those in favour of the proposition as outlined by Councillor Quarterman, please say aye. Or raise your hand. So 2, 4, 6, 8 in favour. Those against that proposition? Sure. So I think we are where we were 5 weeks ago. It's slightly clearer, I hope.
Rest and add on time.
The rest will have to have on time, I'm sure. We move on to item 25.214, highways matters, 25.21401 to receive the speed indicator device report. Duly received. Any questions or comments on the indicator device?
I mean, one question. We've briefed out of the community speed watch group. Thank you for everyone's support. Are we okay if that information is shared with members of that body, public information?
Members of approval.
Members.
Item 25.21402 to receive the report about market parking and agree steps. You've made the report. Do you not have anything to add to the report, or do you want to propose next steps?
No, I put photos there. I think it's one of these sort of weird grey areas that the signs say what they say they do. People want to enforce them, but actually the signs don't say what they're meant to. They don't actually say you can't park there with a photo. They imply it, but they don't say it. So it's finding a solution with NNC that allows us to enforce what we think we have. So all I'm asking for is permission for us to at least start working with them. If they come back and say the only thing is to put a suite of TROs and TTROs, which are slightly different things apparently, one is an extra T, then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it and obviously come back and see what's what. But this is really to get your approval to at least start that process.
Thank you. Any questions of Ian? Well done, Ian. Exactly with it. Yeah, quite. Is that a proposal? Do we need a proposal or do we need to take proposals?
Well, if you're happy for him to
Members
just,
of approval.
Yeah.
There we are.
Members done. Thank you.
Item 25.215 planning matters to receive the minutes from the planning committee meeting held on the 24th of March. David, you have anything to add to those minutes?
I wasn't actually there, but I've seen the minutes. Everybody else has seen the minutes. And I rather hope we can just move straight on.
Wonderful. Anyone have any questions of the planning committee chair? No, received, duly received. Estates Management Committee, item 25.216. Item 25.21601 to receive the minutes from the Estates Committee meeting held on the 7th of April. Do you have anything to add to those minutes?
Absolutely nothing.
Those minutes are received. Does anybody have any questions of the chair of Estates? Item duly received. We move on to item 25.217, Marketing Working Party and Communications Working Party. 21701 to receive the minutes from the Joint Marketing and Communications Working Party. Ian, do you have anything to add to those minutes? Does anybody have any questions to ask for Ian? I have one question. Noting the need for standardised text and font sizes and email to both. How do you police that or enforce it?
Well, we had a discussion about that and we agreed that it would be Arial.
I think so. I can't remember.
Primarily because
I think it's been done.
Because that is the one that's easier to read, especially if you have disabilities or whatever. It's enforcing it. It's going to be very hard to enforce, but we hope to put that out as a standard. All councillors will follow it. Certainly the officers will.
Thank you. Item 25.21702 to consider disbanding the Marketing Working Party and Communications Working Party, setting up a Marketing Committee of Communications Subcommittee reporting to the Marketing Committee. Ian, do you want to give the paper's in there.
The paper's in there.
Just it's work because this is quite a change.
Yeah, it's a change because we've, as a marketing working party, we're working very closely, trying to get the marketing plan, we've got the marketing plan up, we've got the budgets up. We now need, to a degree, speed and essence to get things moving. I'll give you a quick example. We're going through, and it's actually on the next agenda. I'll talk about it now. It's the social media and website agency work. We're going through this at the moment. It's taking a bit longer because of certain areas, such as the website. People did not want to work with somebody else's website, and so we've run into some problems with that. However, there is solutions. So Rebecca and I are working on that right now. In social media, we've got a couple more people. This is taking a bit longer. That sort of thing needs to move. They keep coming back to full council for that type of operational decision. It takes time. Also, if we're wanting to put out some social media posts or whatever in conjunction with the clerk, because the clerk has to approve all social media posts, we need to do that without necessarily having to come back to full council for a particular campaign. So we had this long discussion. The clerk very kindly reached out to Danny Moody and checked it. He thought it was a good idea and came back with the idea of communications subcommittee reporting to the marketing committee. The beauty of this is, although it's a little bit more complication from our side, is that we'll be able to make those decisions and act as a proper marketing committee and move that forward with the budgets that we have.
So the marketing committee as a committee can make those decisions quickly, but the committee is a public meeting,
Correct.
whereas the Comms Working Party is a major working party because it's not a public meeting, but the two are run at the same, correct, at the same time. My only question is, by subcommittee, you mean working party?
Yeah, effectively, yes, it is. And it reports through. The key thing too is anything that is kind of private will be done in camera.
I'll take David, and then Ian, and then Rob.
In a sense, just picking up on the mayor's point, obviously, practically, if you have a committee, you have to publish agendas in advance, they can publish so far in advance, and so on. Members of the public can come to the meetings. Our policy is that members of the public can then speak to the meetings and so on. I could see that on some levels this might potentially speed things up, and I can see on other levels that it might, unintentionally have almost the opposite effect. Time alone will tell, but I think that we need to be aware of that. There's certainly no problem with the idea of merging them. I'm slightly less clear as to whether, frankly, there's an advantage to doing it as a committee. We do set it up as a committee. We have a structure whereby committees have a budget, potentially of up to a certain amount, but not all committees do, because for example, the planning committee doesn't have a budget. It's slightly difficult to see exactly how it might use it, but not impossible. So full council will certainly have to figure out, well, does the general rule apply to it and so on. And then of course we've still got the same issue that if they want to spend the money that's in excess of that, they need permission. But since we've raised that level considerably, I suspect it's unlikely we get into that situation. So I suspect that the body is going to be able to do that. I'm interested that Danny really thought it was a good idea, because I came here fairly convinced that I might say that I didn't personally think it should turn into a committee, but if Danny thinks it's a decent idea, I'm willing to give it a
I
try.
think it's a committee for spending reasons for speed of decision making. I'll take Ian, then Rob, and I'll come back to you on that.
I was just going to ask the question, presumably the terms of reference would need to deal with how regularly meetings.
Yes, absolutely.
And they'd have to be in the calendar.
Yeah.
For May.
Well, we've already approved that, so but we will just have to probably amend it.
Related to this point, since there have to be an office of president, there is anyway in the marketing working party who do it in an afternoon it's a bit more flexible. Are there enough evenings in the schedule and a regular month to make that happen? That's my first question. Second is, to David's point around the conversion of the working party to a committee, do we have any precedents of this happening? And if so, was the outcome positive in terms of decision making, or did it slow things down?
Good question. Direct to the
Not in my time. I don't know of any working parties that have turned into committees. Danny Moody didn't say this is a very good idea to do this. Because we'd decided that, and it's not to him to decide whether we're going to have a committee or not. It's up to us to decide. So I just went to him to say, how do we go about, merging these two, but then one is going to report directly to the other. And he first of all said, you need to make sure that in your proposal, you're disbanding the current situation, so the two working parties, and that you then have a marketing committee and the communications becomes the subcommittee that reports to that committee. So that he just said, yes, that's what you do, but this is, yeah. So it is a subcommittee.
And it's there to speed up decisions. There will be problems on the way, undoubtedly, because life isn't like that. But I guess if there are private conversations that need to be held outside of public gaze, Standing Order 3C allows you to take. We wait for the terms of reference.
Just on that, when you were saying about enough, officers, No, there isn't. Possibly, if you want to pick another evening, that might be a bit of a challenge. Potentially earlier before a meeting, preferably not estates, because you've already got, early meeting then anyway. But yeah, I mean, for my preference, certainly wouldn't want to be coming out on another night of a week when you've already got others. But so I think it needs to be a little bit of consideration to those.
Imagine at the moment.
Yeah.
We can sort it out. So the proposal is that we disband the two working parties we've got at the moment, and you will come back to next council meeting with a proposal for a marketing committee, including terms of reference, and a subcommittee, including terms of reference.
No, I think the proposal was we consider suspending a marketing working party and communication party, an agreement to set up a marketing committee and communication subcommittee. We would then come back with terms of reference to be agreed by the council.
So all agreed apart from terms of reference.
Okay.
Okay. Cool. David.
Would it not be better to only dissolve them at a future point, because otherwise they can't stop working now until after the meeting?
I already thought about that, because what I was going to do if this was agreed, my next point was to ask council to co-opt existing members of the old marketing working party to the new marketing committee, and for the next month until it comes through, so we can get the terms of reference through.
We set up committee membership at the beginning of every council year in May. Surely we need to see it.
We can do that then, but so therefore we don't disband the marketing working party.
We vote to disband it from the date of the next meeting.
Okay, all right.
And so it can carry on up until then, and it can draw up
That's
terms
fine.
of reference
Yeah, that's fine,
that
that's
will then
fine.
be provided to that meeting.
So if the proposal is to disband marketing working party, communications working party in May, and concurrently set up a marketing committee, and you'll bring the terms of reference
Yes.
to that. That's the proposal. Before we second it, so one point, there is imminent decisions on social media and websites. So would those decisions have to be off for a month? Yes. Because then you don't have any
Which is the point you make.
yeah. But it's exactly yeah. So that's a proposal to disband the marketing working party and communication working party at the next council meeting, and simultaneously create a new marketing committee with terms of reference to be proposed. Do we make that proposal? Do you have a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Sherwood. So, all those in favour? Right. There you go. 25-21703 to consider results. To consider results from the social media website proposal and agree next steps. Ian.
Right, considering of the last vote, we have a decision to make, ideally as soon as possible, in terms of the appointment of a social media agency and a website agency in terms of revamping the Love Owl website. We put out the RFPs, everything came forward. We've got a couple come back on social media. One's okay, nothing pretty brilliant. We ran into a problem on the website. We didn't really get anybody to come back. And when we went out to ask why, the reason was that they didn't want to work on somebody else's website because of the CMS individual, which I understand completely. So what we've done in the interim, we've gone out and we've got a couple of other people who are interested in this. Rebecca and I actually had a very good call yesterday with the agency that actually runs and manages oundle.co.uk, the official site that we have, not Love Oundle. And they do an enormous amount of work already in this space, and they know our market, and we were very encouraged by that. So we've got that, and we're looking at another alternative as well, which we've got phone calls tomorrow. Social media, we've got one that's quite interesting. We want to have a chat with her. We've got another potential one coming in, thanks to Councillor Adams, who had a contact which we've reached out to. So that's where we stand. My issue at the moment is if we now have to wait till May to put those through, we're probably going to lose about 6 weeks in actually getting this stuff up and running. And I was actually hoping to get for the annual town meetings at least some mock-ups of what New Lavandle was going to look like.
So what do you
So
propose?
what I'd like to propose is that full council gives the marketing working party in conjunction with the clerk permission within budget to appoint a social media agency and a website agency within budget, which has already been agreed by full council.
Any questions of that proposal?
Yeah, because the working party cannot make that decision.
The council committee just, oh, I see.
Yeah, working party, you know, even if you sit here and say, yeah, that's fine, the working party doesn't have, it's not in their terms of reference. They have no powers to.
How do you get around that? Is it possible, and we've done this before, admittedly for the QBH, not before council, if you get to a stage, or if your team get to the stage where there is proposal, we can convene an extraordinary general meeting with 3 days' notice, and as long as we get at least 3 councillors in there, we can make a decision at that stage.
You would need 5.
Fine.
Okay.
I was wrong. It's fine.
Sorry, no, you wouldn't need. Yeah, you would need 5. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
but the principle can be, we can work.
Yeah, you'd need to hold a meeting. You can't delegate that spending power.
Okay, wonderful. But given the urgency, you're all going to get that.
Yeah, that's fine.
David, question?
You could have, however, delegate powers to the clerk. That's good.
Correct.
Not to spend. Not when you're talking about £7,000. No.
Okay.
But if we say, and I'm wondering about the wording, but presumably if this council approved a spend for a project and simply said to the clerk, go and do it, the clerk could do it without us necessarily having to agree with the specific person she was doing it with was.
I'm uncomfortable with that, Dave, 2 reasons. One, this is outside of your remit, I think, and it's outside of your experience. So, no, appointing. Have you appointed social media experts?
No, but I've got a working party of people. No, but this is not why I shouldn't be having authority. You're going against your own financial regulations that are set out.
Good enough. In that case,
I entirely withdraw that.
sorry to insert that here. Ian, are you amending your proposal?
Yes, I'll amend my proposal to say once we have as working party have agreed a social media agency and website agency, we will ask the council to convene a special meeting to be able to approve that funding.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Is that the right wording? To make sure.
I'm going to ask Mr. Max, have you got a question?
It's about precedent again and making sure that we're doing the right thing. So when estates are charged with repairing something or painting something or whatever, invariably we have to have a minimum of 3 votes. So is this going through that procurement process?
It has gone through that procurement process, which will be managed by Emma and Rebecca very well.
Within a
Sorry.
It's gone through the quote where we've got out, putting out our fees, requests for proposals, getting requests back, which we have done that.
Yeah, we were in that process, but as far as I'm aware, there were people still asking questions that were on the working party. So the working party needs to sit down. So in a meeting, yeah.
You're doing it by book.
Yeah.
So we've got the proposal. When the working party needs a decision, they'll ask the clerk to convene an extraordinary meeting.
Well, they'll be asking you.
They'll be asking there.
Yeah, mayor.
I've got some power. Fantastic. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Evans. All those in favour?
Brilliant.
Wonderful, thank you. Have your necessary permission. Item 25.208, Transport Working Party, nothing to report. 219 Market Working Party, nothing to report. 220 Correspondence, nothing to report. We'll take item 25.2021, any other relevant matters for report only. We'll start with you. Do you have any other matters? Any other business? None? James?
I note with delight that the wreck got mowed, but that clumps of quite long cuttings remain. So could we request perhaps that it is mowed again very short time period to mulch that long cuttings down so it's not sitting there.
Noted, it is. Mike, Dave,
I understand there was a serious ignorant accident in coming back from the road the other day. I know very little about it, other than that two people hospitalised as a result of a car mounting pavement and hitting them as they were walking back from town up towards, I believe, the drive to go to Cornflakes. I've not heard any more about it, but I do think that we as a council should make some inquiries of the police, because that is an extraordinarily serious thing that happened. If that information is correct, and I've every reason to believe it.
do we know anything about it? No? So, is that gone back to council? No. Oh, okay. So perhaps it needs to go to the police and tell you what we're doing there. Thank you. Ian.
Yeah, just one very quick one. I understand the new electric vans being delivered in the next couple of weeks. Is that correct?
Potentially, yes. Yeah.
If they are delivered, can we set up a photo opportunity? I think it's a great thing that we are seeing them being very green and hand over. We can use the mayor or whatever to present them. I think I'll be with social media as well. Yes.
Max? No. Max? No. Alison?
Yeah, I've just had an item raised with me by a resident on South Road about signage that's gone up for the pubs, ice cream parlour. Yeah, it's been raised that they felt it was out of character for the street there. I don't know if that's something we can also.
That's a something applied.
So,
The ice cream shop at the ship.
They've got a person that's about that big.
Yeah.
Is there anything we can do about it, or does it have to be brought to highways? Fix on the street.
We just said it's planning, potentially it's.
yes, yeah.
Of the advertising regulations, so it probably ought to be raised with enforcement.
So who would do that, planning or the car?
I think you can report through street doctor and things like fly posting. Yeah, so you can just report where it is.
Maybe that's something you can follow up as well with the enforcement team, but report on Fifth Street.
Follow up with InCop.
The enforcement team is talking about being planning matter.
Okay.
Yeah. Fifth Street.
Just one small one. Took the best part of a month to fix the flapping banner sign near primary school.
I've reported it. I've reported it to them,
Yeah,
and the lady that I spoke to who arranged for putting them up, she was going to speak to the company.
I lived as a way of speaking up should it happen again, because it was really quite dangerous and all kids walking underneath it. That's been fixed, but it took about a month. It didn't look good. I know that's not our remit, but is there a way of expediting those kind of requests?
I can follow it up again.
Just as an interest, because it's likely to happen again.
Thank you. Just a couple of bits from me. First of all, a reminder, the Scout Group's George's Day Parade is on Sunday for those who wish to go, and the Handle Group are hosting for North, which is something special. I will be going if anybody else wants to go. Please let me have your interest, and I'll give you all the details. Reminder that next month is election month, so elections for mayor, deputy mayor, and estates planning, and probably marketing. Although there may already be something put in there for that. I mention it only because if anybody's interested in any of those positions and they need information or want information, please talk to either Ian or Max or me or Emma if you want the details.
Unfortunately, I'm not going to be there on the May meeting. So how do I register? I know that's my worry. No, is how can I register my interest in the certain committees or whatever? How's that process done?
Through me. What I'll do beforehand is just send you out an email with all of the committees on there, And if anybody wants to come back and say, yes, I want to still do this, or I don't want to do that, just let me know.
Thank you.
You get your chance. And you may even get your.
Excuse me, do we need to reconfirm, because I won't get there either, do we need to reconfirm we'd like to be on the committee we're already on?
Yeah, ideally, yeah. Mhm.
So, for instance, so will there be voting?
Yes.
Right.
For mayor, the deputy mayor, for the chairs of planning, estates, marketing.
No, that happens at the first meeting of that committee, yeah.
Oh, I see. So just mayor and deputy.
Because I can't be here for the next meeting.
Right.
Because I'm not having a knee replaced.
Okay.
So, am I able to vote?
No.
No.
Crazily, you can't vote unless you're actually in the room. Right. Even though you could drink it.
But you can vote for somebody who isn't in the room.
You can vote for somebody who's not.
Yeah, if they've expressed. So you're going to be mayor as of.
So that's your punishment for being a legalist, Mr. Mayor. Item 221 is finished. So please note that in view of the special and/or nature of the business about to be transacted, it's advisable in the public interest, the public to be excluded and instructed to withdraw. That's what I'm proposing the standing order through C. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Chapel, all those in favour? Wonderful. But before you move into that,
I was just going to say, before you close, you perhaps want to do add an extra few minutes on as well.
Exactly, just like to do exactly that. So if you can switch that thing off, that would be great. Oh, I have to do it before you close.
Well, yeah, because you've got to do that in open session. Yeah.
We've still got any questions to discuss. So I'm going to propose that we add on 15 minutes to this meeting, so we finish 9:45, not 9:30. You have a second for that proposal, Councillor Chapel, thank you, all those in favour. Thank you. We're adding on 15 minutes. Now can Joe go off, please?